Good evening. I'm Phoenix. Welcome to Minor Piece Theatre. Tonight is our final episode in our 4-part November series called I Creatively Procrastinate from the NaNoWriMo Challenge, in which I am enrolled this month, through taking part in a little bit of literary nonsense with all of you. It has been a wonderful journey through suspense, the bizarre, and the heartwarming, and now we wrap up with the short story I created from the nouns you supplied me over the last week. Lizard, bubble, bus, tree, purse, unicorn, feather, sorcerer, Blarney Stone, leprechaun, garden, peacock, castle, acrobat, wig, dentist, patience, family, winter, and finally, yoga. I have titled this piece, The Price of Patience, and I look forward to sharing it with you tonight. It was 11 o'clock, which in and of itself was not necessarily a momentous time, but for me, today, it may well have been the final hour. I stared out my window, my mind whirling as a long peacock feather on the driver's hat bobbed up and down, marking his progress as he moved around the broken-down bus. We had only been stopped for a matter of minutes, but the late summer heat was already building, causing my aching tooth to twinge even more than it had in rehearsal this morning. "Well," the driver said presently, wiping his hands on his handkerchief, "I'm afraid it's no good. This old bus is not going anywhere." "But," I said, holding my throbbing jaw, "we can't be stuck. I have to get to the next village before lunch." "Then I would recommend walking," the driver shrugged, then hopped up on his seat and tipped his cap over his eyes for a nap. I stood in the aisle for a moment, then sighed, grabbed my purse, and hurried out the door. Normally, I would be more understanding. After all, this is the land of Gardania, where anything that could happen usually did. But today I did not have time to waste. My acrobatic troupe had a very important performance at the Blarney Stone Castle that evening, and with my aching tooth, as bad as it was, there was little chance I would be able to perform, which meant the show simply could not go on, unless I got it fixed, which is what I was trying to do. The road before me descended the hill in lazy zigzags until it reached a thick strip of forest at the feet of the slope. I could just make out the village on the far side of the trees and past the fields beyond them. As long as I was in the dentist's chair before his afternoon siesta, Dr. Bernard would see me. That gave me 55 minutes. I shouldered my purse and hurried down the hill. Despite gravity's help, I was breathing hard and very warm when I reached the bottom, but I refused to slow my pace. The trees closed in, the shadows grew longer, and I pressed on, making good time until I inevitably came to a fork in the road. I looked left, then right. With no signposts to identify the way, I had no idea which route to take. The shifting of shadows and an annoyed "nay" drew my attention as a large white form materialized from the undergrowth. "You there," the unicorn huffed, ruffling its mane, or what was left of its mane. It seemed to have had some sort of tussle with some trimming shears, which had left the creature practically bald. "What are you doing here?" "Getting helplessly lost, I'm afraid," I admitted, not in the least surprised to be having a conversation with a horned horse. After all, this was the land of Gardania. "Do you know which way will take me to the village?" "Yes," was the simple response. I waited for a minute. "Would you mind telling me?" I asked finally. The unicorn regarded me thoughtfully. "That depends," he said. "What do I get in return?" "Name your price," I said, desperation making me generous. "I don't have much, but I really must get to the village, and I am running out of time." The unicorn mused. Then he gestured to my head. "You seem to be wearing a very fine wig that would look positively stunning flowing down my neck, wouldn't you say? You want my wig? I asked, blinking. I had forgotten I was still wearing it from our practice earlier. Sure, here. I took it off and settled it around the unicorn's horn. The creature trotted back and forth, making little chuffing noises to himself as he flicked the tresses from side to side. Well, just wait until the others see me in this, he grinned. Then he paused and pointed a hoof to the right. The village is down there, friend. Thank you, I said, giving the unicorn a bow and hurried on. Everything seemed to be going very well, which should have been my first clue that my luck would not last. Sure enough, I rounded a bend and came face to face with a tall, ivy-covered stone wall. In the middle of the wall, where the road passed through, a heavy iron gate stood, locked up tightly. I approached the bars, my stomach falling, then looked through them. The road continued on the other side, down into the fields that surrounded the distant village. The sun shone on the grasses, turning them golden green. Hello, a small voice said near my ear. I nearly jumped out of my skin as I turned to see a small emerald lizard basking on the stones. Hello, I replied. Do you know how I can get through? I have a very important appointment in the village, and I absolutely cannot miss it. Yes, said the lizard. There is a key hanging up on the other side of the gate. I pressed my face against the bars and peered at the spot to which the lizard pointed. There was a large brass key, just as she said, but no way I could reach it. I looked at the lizard. I'm so sorry to bother you, I said, but I am in a terrible hurry. Is there any way you could reach that key for me? The lizard gave a large yawn and stretched sleepily. I could, she admitted, but I am having the most luxurious nap. What would be in it for me? I stared, hardly believing my ears. I started, then patted my pockets. I could pay you, I guess. What good would coins be to a lizard? The lizard asked. She had a point. Then she squinted at my earlobes. But those pearls are pretty. They look like shiny bubbles. I love bubbles, don't you? Oh, yes, I said, gritting my teeth beneath my smile, which I realized was a terrible mistake as pain flared anew from my aching mouth. Would you like them? Her tiny eyes shone as I unclipped the backs and passed them to her. She grabbed them in her little arms and whisked them up and out of sight over the wall. I waited for an agonizing minute until she popped back into sight, the key hanging around her neck like a collar. I thanked her and unlocked the gate, then hurried through and into the fields. The sun beat down on top of my head, reminding me with each step that my time was running out. I clutched my purse tighter up to my side and ran until I could not possibly run any more, finally stopping for a breath beneath a wide overhang of a sprawling oak. Tears of pain and frustration blurred my vision as I looked at the distance I still needed to go. Ho now, a voice said from the branches above. Who are you, and why are you sobbing beneath my tree? I am so sorry to disturb you, I said, turning toward the owner of the voice, who happened to be a leprechaun. I hastily wiped my eyes with my handkerchief. My name is Menlon. I'm one of the acrobats who is supposed to perform at the Blarney Stone castle tonight, but first I must get to the dentist in the village. But the bus broke down, and I got lost in the woods, and then stuck at the gate, and now I am terribly late, and I don't know what to do. Well, he said slowly, you may be in luck. He swung down from the branch and landed at my feet. Beeble the gardener is my name, and I do have a reputation for being a bit of a sorcerer in my family, if I do say so myself. I can transport you to the village as quick as a wink, but it will cost you. I had already given up my wig, my pearls, and nearly all of my patience, but I managed to nod. What is your price? I asked. Well, I don't know if you know. The summer does not last forever, and there is not a lot of work for a gardener like me to do when the snow sits on the ground. I get terribly stiff waiting for spring, and you being an acrobat, I would think you must know all sorts of ways to keep limber. I nearly laughed. You want me to help you stretch? Well, there is no need to poke fun, he chided. I raised my hands and gave him an apologetic smile. I'm not poking fun. I would love to share some of my stretching routines with you. Have you ever heard of yoga? Yoga, he said, savoring the word, rolling it about his mouth and tongue. No, but it sounds delightful. What is it? It's a practice that involves breathing, meditations, and stretching to develop wellness, relaxation, strength, and flexibility. I would be happy to come back and show it to you once I am done at the castle tonight. The leprechaun thought for a moment, then stuck out his hand, grinning. It's a deal, he said. I reached out to shake, and the moment our palms touched, there was a great whoosh, and I found myself sitting in Dr. Bernard's dentist chair, the overhead light bright in my eyes and bib around my neck. Needless to say, Dr. Bernard was a little surprised to see me, but then again, this is the land of Gardenia, where almost anything that can happen does happen. So he went about his work without comment. In the end, he got his patient, I got my tooth pulled, the leprechaun got his yoga, the unicorn got his wig, the lizard got her pearl, and that night the king and queen got the most spectacular performance they had ever seen. The end. Thank you so much for joining me this month. It has been my pleasure to write with you, and I look forward to doing so again in the future. Until then, good night, good week, and a very happy December.